Welcome to the Athletics Fantasy Cheat Sheet. Michael Beller, Brandon Funston, and Eric Moody with you here. We're going to take some viewer questions in a second, but first, Athletic Fantasy Cheat Sheet brought to you by Jock Market. Check out Jock Market, the newest player in daily fantasy sports. Moody, this first question is for you. It comes from Brian W. The question: who is a running back and a wide receiver that are high upside gambles you would recommend?
Ooh, that's a very good question. I'm going to go with Joshua Kelly and Henry Ruggs. These are two players that immediately came to mind. Just really quickly, you look at Kelly, eighth running back in UCLA history to have consecutive seasons with 1,000 or more rushing yards. He finished his career ranked 14th on the school's all-time rushing list and 11th for career touchdowns. One thing that's interesting, I do envision the Chargers using him more as a runner in between the tackles, possibly than Eckler, but I think he could also steal some goal line touches from Austin Eckler as well. You look on the other side of the ledger, wide receiver, Henry Ruggs. This is a guy that has all the tools necessary to succeed at the next level. He's the ideal Z receiver who can work off other routes and occupy defenders deep with his excellent speed. Also, one thing that's interesting with Ruggs, he does have experience with multiple roles, which does make him more versatile. You look at Crimson Tide receivers. He's only the fourth Alabama receiver taken in the first round of the last 10 drafts before this year. All those players have had success at the next level. Ruggs is essentially the Raiders' version of Tyreek Hill. So those two are my guys that I would take that can really provide a nice return on investment for fantasy players this summer.
I'd be dying to know if Henry Ruggs and Jerry Jeudy had a little friendly bet of which one of them would go higher in the draft. I would love to know a story like that. But alas, we'll save that for another day. Brandon, this next question is for you. It comes from Michael T. Getting very specific here. Wants to know if you are on board with getting both Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs in an auction, saying that is his strategy right now. I would say you don't want to lock yourself into specific players, but let's just talk about those two players, Brandon, Joe Mixon and Josh Jacobs, pairing the two of them in an auction.
Yeah, I'm super high on Josh Jacobs, and I like the strategy. Obviously, in an auction, everything is about the value you're going to be able to get these guys for. But where I'm valuing Josh Jacobs, I would be surprised if you couldn't get him for a fair value, at least in my mind. I like Mixon too. The thing about these two guys is they are the clear featured leaders in their backfield. They'll likely push 300-plus touches. I think both of them have the upside to go 40-plus receptions. We know there's been a lot of talk about Josh Jacobs wanting to improve in that department and go up to 60 catches. But even if you fall short but goes over 40, I think that's great improvement and double what he did last year when he spent half of the year dealing with a broken shoulder blade. So healthy and upping his game in the passing game, I think I see big returns for Josh Jacobs. Joe Mixon, you want to make sure that this guy's not going to hold out. There's been some rumblings about that, but assuming he does the smart thing, because there's really no upside to running backs holding out these days. We've seen that with Joe Burrow there and all the accolades and all the good buzz he's getting and how he kind of, was great for Clyde Edwards-Hilaire in the passing game. I think Joe Mixon has a lot of room for improvement in terms of receptions as well. So I don't hate the strategy at all.
All right, Moody. Jeff R. wants to know, why is no one talking about Curtis Samuel as a potential sleeper?
So it's like, raise your hand if you were burned by Curtis Samuel in 2019.
Right here. Absolutely.
And I can imagine a lot of listeners feel the same way. So, hey, we were burned. Okay, we get it. Hey, that's in the past. He wasn't in an ideal situation to succeed with Kyle Allen and not Cam Newton under center. Mm-hmm. You look at Samuel. He accumulated a little over 1,600 air yards last season, but only converted 627 of those yards into actual receiving yards. Now, if you look at those statistics, every other receiver with around 1,400 or more air yards last season had over 1,000 receiving yards. Unfortunately, Curtis Samuel was not part of that bunch. But I think the biggest hurdle for Samuel for this season, one thing that he's going to have to overcome is the arrival of Robbie Anderson. He does have a deep connection with new Panthers head coach Matt Rule. And I think that's going to kind of sour a lot of people on Samuel when you combine all those factors.
All right, our next question comes from David S. It is for you, Mr. Funston. It's a simple one. Middle of the first round, are you taking Clyde Edwards-Hilaire or Delvin Cook?
I'm still with Dalvin Cook, a guy who was number 3 in half PPR points per game last year. They lose Kevin Stefanski as the offensive coordinator. They're one of the most run-heavy teams in the league, but you get Gary Kubiak, who will keep that running game going. He has a well-paved track record of engineering great rushing attacks. So I think, and lately we've seen the Clyde Edwards-Hilaire is, been struggling a bit with pass protection. I mean, you throw that along with ball security. Those are two of the biggest no-nos for rookie running backs. You have to protect your quarterback, especially when he is the highest paid quarterback in the league and the absolute number one pick in any kind of reality, draft where you're building a team. It's Pat Mahomes. So I love Clyde Edwards-Hilaire's talent. I think he's going to be a great fit in Kansas City. But just workload and kind of the bird in hand with Dalvin Cook, you know what you're going to get. And I think you take that assurity in the middle of the first round ahead of Clyde Edwards-Hilaire.
All right, we got time for a few more questions here. We're going to go back to you, Moody, with Alexandre B. He wants to know, between Deontay Johnson and Tyler Boyd, which one has the higher ceiling?
You've got to go with Tyler Boyd here. He does have the higher ceiling. You look at last season. He finished last season with 90 receptions, which ranked 8th among wide receivers. One thing with Boyd, he's exceeded 1,000 or more receiving yards over the last 2 seasons, which is very impressive considering the quality of quarterbacks who have thrown him the football, we'll say. He's really the most consistent the most consistent receiver that rookie Joe Burrow has on the roster. You look at Burrow. He's heavily targeted Justin Jefferson out of the slot last season at LSU. Once you combine a lot of these different factors, along with AJ Green, with his injury history over the last 2 seasons, Boyd is going to have the higher ceiling. He's going to be very productive with Green in the lineup, but just imagine the possibilities if Green does miss extended time. You're looking at someone on the wide receiver 1 radar.
All right, one more question here. It comes to us from Kushal P. This one is going to be for you, Funston, so take us home right here. Who do you think is going to win out as the wide receiver 2 in Jacksonville? Of course, we are assuming DJ Chark is the wide receiver 1. Is it going to be Dede Westbrook, or everyone's favorite, maybe not everyone's favorite rookie, but one of everyone's favorite late round rookie, Laviska Shenault?
Yeah, I'm going to bring up that term upside again and ceiling, and I think you got to go with Laviska Shenault because we know what Dede Westbrook is, and I've been a Dede Westbrook fan, but he's got 3 seasons logged in the league, and we're seeing 66 catches, 600 to 700 yards. He hasn't really moved the needle, and do we think he's going to have an appreciably higher ceiling this year, or do we just kind of think Dede Westbrook is who he is? I'm kind of leaning more to the latter. With Laviska Shenault, while he may not put up as many, as high receiving numbers as Dede Westbrook, I think there's more potential of him getting a bunch of different kind of plays where he's actually used in the backfield as well. He's one of these running backs playing receivers, his yards after the catch and just getting the ball in short space in a lot of different creative ways. I think you look at that and the potential there. Like if Leonard Fournette got hurt, you wouldn't be surprised if they used him a little bit as running back on occasion. I just think there's more avenues to where Laviska Shenault might be able to actually help your fantasy team in the end than Dede Westbrook. So I would just roll the dice on the upside of Laviska Shenault. It's going to be a late pick anyways. Might as well see if you can catch lightning in a bottle.
All right, that's going to do it for this week's Athletic Fantasy Cheat Sheet Mailbag. Please keep sending us those questions. We will get to as many of them every single week as we can. Eric Moody, thanks for joining us. This is the Athletic Fantasy Cheat Sheet brought to you by Jock Market. Again, get 30% off a subscription to The Athletic if you go to theathletic.com/draftkit.